What are the drawbacks of ESOPs? Because ESOPs are not for everybody and they don't work in every case. Well, they're not cheap to implement and to maintain. People ask me how much it costs to implement an ESOP. Of course, the answer is it depends on so many things, depending on the configuration of the transaction. A rule of thumb would be somewhere between 1% to 3% of the equity value of the business. And that's all inclusive. The attorneys, the trustees, the appraisers, the CPAs, that's total all in. The larger the business, the closer you are to the 1%, because a lot of these costs are fixed. The smaller you are, the closer you are to that 3%. To maintain it annually, $25,000 to $60,000 a year for an annual valuation, for independent trustee fees, for record-keeping fees. Another drawback of ESOPs is that you are not allowed to discriminate in favor of highly compensated employees. Just like any qualified plan, the benefits have to be essentially non-discriminatory in their allocation. Now, I don't think that's necessarily a negative thing, because especially our 100% ESOP-owned companies typically provide additional benefits to the management team in the form of a management incentive plan, including stock appreciation rights or phantom stock. So there's typically an additional layer of equity provided outside of the ESOP for the key executives. Okay? But within the ESOP itself, we have to be non-discriminatory in our allocations. The ESOP can only pay fair market value, can't pay more than fair market value, and that fair market value is defined as what a financial buyer would pay, not a strategic buyer. So again, if you have some, perhaps a competitor who would love to get you out of the space and could acquire you and get rid of your accounting department and HR and all of these things and get rid of half of the management team. Well, an ESOP doesn't bring those things to the table, does it? Right? The ESOP is a financial buyer, much like private equity. So if you think what private equity would pay in terms of multiples and so on, that's typically what an ESOP would pay. That's the best metric for that. Mature ESOPs have to buy back all of that stock that they're allocating to employees. It might not be for a very long time, but eventually we can't market these shares publicly, so the company has to buy those shares back. You have to plan for that. Okay? In my experience now, 17 years of experience doing this, I don't have any ESOP companies that are paying more in their annual repurchase obligation than they would be paying in taxes if they were not tax exempt. So I view that as a win. They're paying less money out and they're paying it to employees instead of to the government. Yes, ma'am. Fiduciary responsibility for an ESOP touches on the last point here. Okay. First of all, the regulators are the Internal Revenue Service and the Department of Labor. They want to make sure that everything is above board and that the ESOP didn't pay more than fair market value for the stock. The decision to acquire that stock and what that value should be rests with the trustee of the ESOP trust. It's best practice in today's market to use independent trustees, professional trustees that do nothing but ESOP transactional work. So they have vast experience understanding valuations, understanding all of the terms of a transaction like this to ensure that they're fair to the employees. In fact, there is typically a fairness opinion sought by a qualified appraiser of both not just absolute fairness, but relative fairness to the employees. So that has to be very, very well documented. It has to be a high priority to make sure that everything is by the book, right? Because the Department of Labor lags in their enforcement effort. Several years ago, 6 to 10 years ago, they detected that there were some transactions that were not done properly. And so now their enforcement action is significant. So they've stated publicly that they would like to investigate all of the ESOP transactions. Now they don't have the resources to do that, but we structure all of our transactions with the assumption that they will be investigated. I've got a great track record, knock on wood.